Abilities are the fundamentals of battle cats. They determine if a cat will be good or bad. And today we're going to rank them all from worst to best. Also, I will not rank abilities you can only get from talents, and also not single or area attack, and this is a subjective tier list, so your opinion will not be the same as mine. So if you disagree with any of these, then comment down below and I'll make sure to ban you. The worst ability at number 47 is Base Destroyer. You probably forgot about it, and it seems like Ponos did as well, because there is only one cat that has it, even though it came out years ago. It doesn't necessarily drag you down, but 99% of the time it's insignificant. Next up we have... it doesn't have an official name, but everyone calls it Kamikaze, so we'll go with that. I'm not gonna explain what all the abilities do, but the nerdy ones I will. So essentially what this ability does is after the cat has attacked, it dies. It is mostly used in cats where it doesn't really matter too much if the cat dies or not, and can even be beneficial sometimes. And I think it can be helpful more often than Base Destroyer. Moving on to attacks only, and this one is a bit weird because if a cat has this ability, it will generally have more DPS and better stats due to the fact that it has this ability. But in this list I will not include that because it's technically not a requirement, it's just that they generally do have more DPS. Besides all that, you can actually use this disadvantage to your advantage, because you will be able to stack a bunch of these cats incredibly easy on certain stages, but in most cases it's not very good. Then we have multi-hit. I feel like this ability is meant to be good, and a lot of the times it is. It's not very helpful, but it's helpful. However, if a cat that focuses on DPS has this ability, it can actually make the cat worse. For example, if we take Kung Fu Cat's second form that has multi-hit, his first attack deals less damage than his second attack, and a lot of the times the first attack knocks the enemy back, which makes the strong attack miss. So you would rather have the first form, which does not have multi-hit, so the strong attack actually hits. So on supports and crowd controllers it's a bit helpful, and on damage dealers it's quite bad. Extra money, it doesn't hurt you in any way, shape or form, but it doesn't help too much either. Most cats with this ability are very bad, however there are some good cats like Bullet Train Cat that also has this ability. And when good cats have this ability, then it's just a bonus. Next up is Omni Strike, which is similar in the sense of it doesn't hurt the cat to have this, but it also doesn't help the cat too much. Plus, I also think it practically only works on zombies, does it not? So what it does is that it gives the cat the ability to also damage enemies that are behind the cat. I think this ability is better for an enemy to have, because you know you can cheese through certain enemies, but it doesn't really work the other way around. By the way, I only rank the abilities from the cat's perspective and not the enemies. Moving on to immunity to weaken, I think most people would agree that this is the worst of the immunities. You might put it higher, you might put it lower, I don't know, but I think you at least can agree that this is the worst immunity. I bet people could play this game a couple of 100 hours without being able to name a single enemy that weakens you. I don't know, in my opinion this is not that helpful. Then we have the actual weaken ability, and after you're past the early game, enemies deal so much damage that they pretty much one-shot your cats even if you weaken them. It's absolutely not useless, it can be helpful in some scenarios, but most of the time I think you're not even gonna remember that weaken exists. Immunity to explosion. This one kinda suffers from the amount of enemies at the moment. Currently, there are like no enemies that even have this ability, or cats for that matter. This one is currently very bad, but I imagine that it can become quite helpful once they add more enemies with explosion, but this is where it lands for now. Next up is the Survive a Lethal Strike. It works good on certain cats like Jiangshi cats, Shishilam Paslan, Count Shukamura, etc., giving them another chance of attacking. On some cats it's very pointless and a lot of the times they die before they even get their second attack off. Overall it's alright. Moving on to dodge, which is somewhat similar but works best on meat shields and tanks. When you're meat shielding, you usually put out a stream of meat shields, so dodge isn't that helpful cause you will always have a meat shield in the front anyway. On tanks however, it works very well, makes the tank more tanky. Then we have Soul Strike. This ability only works on zombies, and an ability that only works on one trait will not be as good as an ability that works on all enemies. Unless it's an ability that is required to be that type of enemy, which Soul Strike is not. If you use Zombie Killer in the first place, you won't even need this ability, but it can be helpful sometimes, but very rarely. Now we have some immunities. First off is immunity to slow, extremely helpful on some stages and completely pointless on 99% of stages. Freeze immunity, pretty similar, although I think there are more stages where you need this one. I'm not quite sure, but maybe these should swap places. Either way, they are very similar. And then immunity to knockback, and I think this one is the most important of these three. I recall thinking that I needed immunity to knockbacks at some point. For example, Cats of the Cosmos Chapter 2, right? Yeah, I think that's the stage where Kai is so strong due to the knockback immunity. So this is the first immunity where I've actually thought about using. Metal, it's good in stages where there are a few enemies or mostly enemies that has slow attacks. There absolutely are stages where metal can be quite helpful, however, regular old meat shields does their job so well, so you rarely ever need metal. I guess it could be good at stalling wave attacks. Next up is Zombie Killer. I feel like some would disagree with this one. I just think that, again, it's only against zombies, which drags it down, and also you don't need it against zombies. It's by all means helpful towards zombies, but in most cases you don't need Zombie Killer. I would definitely say that it's better than Soul Strike though. Then we actually have Metal Killer. The same reasoning, but this one helps with metal better than Zombie Killer does with zombies. Moving on to Strengthen. You can actually combine this with a cat combo and the damage will become ridiculous. If you have an XL Strengthen Up combo, you can get 100% plus damage, and that obviously can do some crazy stuff. Even without a combo, it's still pretty good, I would say. Savage Blow, somewhat similar, but the cat doesn't have to be low for it to deal a lot of damage. I would categorize this as a bonus ability. If a cat has this, then it's just a bonus. Then we have a bunch of immunities, so I'm just gonna go over them real quick. Warp immunity, definitely more important than the previous immunities. Toxic immunity. Toxic might not be as common, I'm not sure, but it's usually more dangerous, thus making the immunity more valuable. Wave immunity. Waves are common and dangerous. Then finally, Surge immunity. Surge attacks are very powerful in this game, so being immune to them are great. Next up is Wave Shield, which is basically the same as a wave immunity, but for your entire team, if they are behind the cat that shields the wave. Pretty self-explanatory. Moving on to Resistance. Being resistant to something means that the cat will only take 1/5 of the damage that it would regularly do, if you have the treasures. It's most effective on tanks, and making a tank essentially 5 times more durable, which is very good. Now we actually have Curse. When I first did this ranking, I did not expect Curse to be so high, but being able to disable any enemy ability is, in my opinion, better than being immune. Because if you're immune, you only protect yourself compared to Curse, who protects your entire team. Although it's only helpful against enemies that actually have abilities. Mini-Wave, they hit their original attack dealing damage, and 20% of that damage goes with the wave in an extended range, so you can deal a bunch of damage in the front while dealing a bit of damage to the backline. It's also good at clearing peons. I don't know, I think Mini-Wave is great. Then comes the Mini Surge. They're kinda similar. I do prefer this one though. It's a bit more random though. Insanely tough, same as resistance but better. Next up is Explosion. It's a very powerful ability. It's somewhat a combination of wave and surge attacks, but also not really. In very few cases, it can actually ruin for you with timing stuff, cause it can double knockback. But I would say overall it's a very good ability. Long range or long distance. This one is very weird, not only that it's called long distance even though it says long range, but also it doesn't technically mean that a cat will have long range. Air has shorter range than Cosmo, even though Air has the ability and Cosmo don't. But the most cats with this ability actually do have long range, so that's why it's so high. Because having long range is great. Long range pretty much carries you through the early and mid game and is still helpful in the late game. Moving on to Strong Against, gives you both more resistance and more damage. It's simple but effective. Wave attacks. It hurts me to put wave attacks this low. I know it's not technically low, but I wanna put it higher. It is damage, it's range, it carries other abilities along with it, it's cool, and it's satisfying. Using wave attacks are so fun, and even facing wave attacks are fun. A lot of memorable stages includes wave attacks, although it's technically not the best ability in the game, but it low-key is. Then we have Barrier Breaker. The only reason Barrier Breaker is above wave attacks is because to complete the game you actually are required to use Barrier Breaker. It might be the only ability you physically need to complete the game. No, I think there might be one more that we'll go through soon. By the way, this ability is also good in stages where you don't actually have to use it. Shield Pierce, the exact same but to Aku shields, which are more dangerous in my opinion. And now we have Critical Hits, the other ability you actually are required to have to complete the game. But now that they added Metal Killer, you maybe could use that instead. I'm not sure how that would work. But 90% of the time this will be superior over Metal Killer, and 90% of the time this will be the only one you have, so I think almost every one of you know this, but critical hits are used to deal damage to metal enemies. Conjure, I don't have a lot of experience with Conjure. I've heard that it's great and it seems pretty good, but I've also heard there are quite a bit of flaws with it. You can only have one Conjure cat at a time, and it's another thing that you have to keep in mind and keep pressing at. As I said, I'm not very familiar with Conjure, so this one I'm not sure about at all, but comment down below what you think about Conjure. Massive damage. Insane damage. Colossus Slayer, it's similar to Strong Against, but I think you can stack Strong Against with this one. Colossal enemies and Behemoth and Sage, they're very hard I would say, so having this one and the following Behemoth Slayer and Sage Slayer are crucial. Then just short for top 3 is Slow. Making it so your enemies stand still is very effective. Mitama, one of the best cats, and I think she might even have been the best when she was released. Her main thing is slowing enemies at good range. At third place we have Knockback, and I think that no one will agree with me here, but that's okay. I just feel like knocking things back can sometimes be better, and constantly knocking something back is kinda similar to slowing them, cause they can't really move forwards when they're being pushed back. And a very important detail is that knockbacks can actually cancel an attack, which can be extremely effective. And at second place, which one do we have? Is it freeze or is it surge attacks? It is surge attacks. I think most people would have their surge attack in their top 3 or 5. Surge attacks are wave attacks but way more effective. The only thing that it doesn't have is the nostalgia and the feeling of a wave attack, but I can't deny that it's more effective than a wave attack. And at the first place we have Freeze. Freeze does everything right. It's easy to get even in the early game. It stops attacks, it stops movement, it stops difficulty, and it pretty much replaces slow and knockback. That's the list, and if you disagree, I'm telling you, don't be disrespectful. I have opinions just like you, and none of us deserves disrespect. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe, thanks for watching, and goodbye.